turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
The Timothy Aslan. Hello.
Oh, hello. It's me.
and it is you listening along with us. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to episode 128 of Dismembering Horror, the podcast show where myself, Ryan McDuffie, and
myself, the Tim Aslan.
That's right. We dismember a horror film every week. We discuss what worked, what did not work, and anything else we found interesting or noteworthy about a horror film. We are a duo of dark dilettantes, delving, as I said, dismembering, delving into all the demonic delights of, help me out, Tim. How do I finish this
dark Danube of dereliction?
Yes. Dearth of demonic and deadly delights. Anyway.
There you go.
And, well, before we jump into the topic of today's episode, I always like to report if we've had any listener-submitted observations or addings-ons to previous discussions we've had. So a listener just watched Hexen and then listened to our episode, which is what we kind of hope you all do for this, but if not, that's fine. As far as, watch the movie first, then listen in. But a big thing of note that we didn't mention or discover on it concerning the music of Hexen that was both important and interesting, he pointed out. But our listener pointed out that he noticed there was something kind of unnerving or disquieting, as he put it, with one of the music pieces the musical piece during the Devil's Mass in the Woods scene. And he recognized it. It's a piece called, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry, right? Kol Nidre, Nidre. And he said it's a really incredibly important prayer for the night of Yom Kippur in Jewish tradition. As part of it's a service called kind of the same name, Koa Nidr. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think is it Nidre?
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. But he did some digging and saw that on the Criterion, which their main website, which always has supplemental articles to the film. So I somehow missed it. But the arranger of the 2001 recordings, which were intended to recreate, exactly what was the premiere's pieces, he found this passage that sort of, gets into it. It says, there seems to have been some gratuitous anti-Semitism in the choice of Max Bruch's Ko Nidre. It's spelled E-I at the end here. This melody is the most sacred of the Jewish liturgical year, and its use would have been and still is offensive in the context of a film about satanic possession.
Oh, wow.
However, the chant works for dramatic reasons. It fits the Devil's Mass, and its ancient profundity ties the disparate parts of the scene together while also creating a strange emotional counterpoint to what is on screen. This counterpoint becomes important when it is tied to the end of the film. Still, Jews were falsely regarded as devil worshippers, and someone undoubtedly had this association when he chose Bruch's arrangement. Who had this association becomes a critical question, particularly if Christensen really did have something to do with the choice of the music.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought so. But boy, just, even more of a way it sort of ties, it's all these older films that we watch, especially, one like Hexen is just a part of this. God, in this case, pre-World War II era.
Right.
It's incredible. But listener, you know who you are. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You know who you are. We know who you are, too.
And Tim, did you have anything on your mind to follow up on or share before we move on?
Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit. just one thing, really. Last night I put on a documentary on Lovecraft and very quickly realized that I think we kind of touched on this in The Endless. But really, The Endless is an attempt to further along the world building that Lovecraft was, famous for. Like, I realize that now, how they're really attempting to be Lovecraftian. The quote at the beginning obviously is a bit of a tell for that. But when you put that in the context of the question that who was the listener who recommended it?
That was Jesse.
Jesse, right? Sorry, Jesse. When you put it in the context of the question that Jesse is asking, like, why is this getting that? I think we kind of danced around this, but didn't really specifically say. I think it really does kind of boil down to we as a culture, modern horror is really, really, really influenced by Lovecraft in so many ways. Like, he really set the tone for the last 100 years of Western horror. And this idea of the unexplainable noises and knocks and the unknown, like, entities that live and don't care about us. They're indifferent, but they enjoy messing around and, like, torturing us. That is Lovecraft. So The Endless really is a Lovecraftian, or at least an attempt at a Lovecraftian world. And I can appreciate that. And I think that's why a lot of people like it.
It's interesting how, I feel like Lovecraftian, what's the word? How do you say it? Cosmic horror. Has sort of been in vogue of late that we mentioned. But when you mention it like that, I don't know, I can't help but think like you say forces that enjoy torturing, and that's what I had to, like, I don't know, that's just what I didn't. I am not recently read up on it like you, but I feel like that is not what I think of when I think of Lovecraftian cosmic horror, where it is more about their intentions. Whether they have intentions or not is unknown, and that's what's horrifying. It's beyond our comprehension in that sense. Yeah,
I think it sort of depends on. I by no means am an expert on Lovecraft stories, but, like, just watching the documentary and the I don't know, handful of Lovecraft stories I've read, they go back and forth. It depends, and it depends on the context. Some of them have that thing of like the Dunwich Horror really does sort of have this thing of like it's trying to drive the dude crazy. Like it takes a, like, the entity, the whatever it is, kind of revels in that. If I remember correctly. And some of them, it's a totally other thing, like Rats in the Walls, which I really like, is just this wild, cosmic-y, like, other dimensional, like, what is going on sort of fever dream. Yeah. And I personally prefer those ones more. And I don't know, The Endless kind of feels like it's, and maybe this is part of why we didn't love it. I think it's kind of unsure which direction to go at times. Yeah. It's a little bit of both. It's a little middling in a way, potentially.
Or but it's a lot of both in a way.
Right, exactly. I think it makes me appreciate what they're attempting. I think I said this in the episode as well, but, like, I do appreciate what they're going after. And I think, per Jesse's question, like, of why people are digging it, I do think it just sort of comes down to the vibe of that type of world building and storytelling. People, like, there's a large portion of people who just, they are into it. And if they are, they need to go watch Color Out of Space.
I'm glad it sounds like that one's grown on you since you first saw it.
Color Out of Space?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. I love it.
Awesome. I bought it. I got the 4K Blu-ray sitting here. I loved
My
it so much.
only issue with it was some of the way the CGI comes across I didn't love, but like whatever. It's so cool and freaky.
Right. I love it so much. And the special effect, they work for me. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not taking out. But the thing that was like the first hiccup I had to get over for it or sort of ease into was the filmmakers, his like sensibility so unique with just sort of like character building and dialogue. It's sort of this weird line of realistic yet movie-y or like classic movie-y in a way. And I think
a little melodramatic almost.
Yeah, and I think that for people can be a little like they don't know how they're supposed to watch. But like I just buy into the movie world straight up. I really now that I've seen it more than once, you know.
I've been meaning to watch it again lately. I've been kind of craving that.
Yeah, it's
weirdness.
Great. And and last point on all this I'll say is there, you know, we can look at also an example. Mouth of Madness is one that we have covered on the show. It's just interesting to see with the Endless and any other sort of new cosmic horror films or new or old, how they, you know, there's certain tenets we think of we think of with these films. And one of them that I like, and it's just interesting to see how they either adhere to them or, you know, do something else with them. Yep. So the biggest one for me that I'll pay attention to, whether they're doing or not, is whether they go a lot of like Lovecraft stories or in the Mouth of Madness, where it is an escapable descent and there's no, you know, happy ending really for the main character. Yeah. Maybe there's a return to normalcy in the outside looking in sense, but it's all a descent into hell. And I don't know, that I prefer that route. I'm sure you could do it the other way too, but it just kind of, I don't know.
Well, I mean, we made the point, and I think that this is even more, you know, apropos to this conversation. Like we talked about how The Lighthouse, and I would add Eggers' other film, Witch. Those are also Lovecraftian styling stories. They really, really fit into that, I guess, style or that genre of horror. And I personally feel that his execution of that, because obviously it's a broad world or a broad type of thing to do Lovecraftian things, like, right? There's a big difference between Mouth of Madness and The Lighthouse, but there are commonalities, and there are sort of thematic things that are common. There are tonal things that are common. There are visual things that can be common, tentacles, for example.
Yeah,
and so it really is just. I think there are a lot of examples of how different storytellers view the Lovecraftian stylings of storytelling. And I think it's fascinating to see the spectrum that now exists within that.
Yeah.
But also I think it's cool that the impact that Lovecraft had on modern horror storytelling.
It's also super cool to see the decisions whether to set the modern day or not is a big thing. Oh my God, Tim, I just can't get over how good The Lighthouse is. And I hope any listeners who like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people, they weren't totally on board or, you know, on a first viewing. I just hope something about it is maybe stuck with you and maybe it'll grow on you. I think it's one of those
Me
films
personally?
too. The larger you.
Because I love it.
No, anyone who maybe, you know, wasn't as, you know, wooed on the first viewing.
Yeah. Put the subtitles on. It'll help a ton. It really will, because when I saw it the second time and actually had a little bit of like leeway, or not leeway, what am I trying to say? A little lead time, because I knew essentially what was going on and I could really like listen and understand better the language. It was so much more enjoyable.
Cool.
So if that's your hang up with that movie, just put the subtitles on.
Great.
Anyway.
Great.
There
Yes,
you go.
we
What are
got
we
a-
doing this week?
We got a whole movie to talk about here. From 1945.
Oh,
we
yeah,
have-
The Booty Snatcher.
Tim, you added an extra O. It's The Body Snatcher.
Oh.
That's
Are you
right.
sure we watched the same thing?
Maybe not. Directed by, I watched the one directed by Robert Wise, produced by Val Lewton, screenplay by Philip MacDonald and Val Lewton, based on The Body Snatcher from the 1884 short story by Robert Louis Stevenson. And some context for each of them. Robert Louis Stevenson, may recognize his name from writing Treasure Island and Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Val Lewton, the producer, also did, one that we've covered on the show, Cat People.
Yep.
But then also did, the follow-up, Curse of the Cat People. I watched Ghost Ship was a fun old one. I Walked with a Zombie. Whole slew of kind of films of that ilk. Foggy Walks at Night. It's great. And then directed by Robert Wise also. So after, right before The Body Snatcher, he was coming off of doing that Cat People sequel, Curse of the Cat People. Went on to do The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1963 The Haunting, West Side Story.
Come on.
I believe co-director on West Side Story, Sound of Music. And Tim, even from onto the Andromeda strain and the Star Trek, the motion picture, the first Star Trek movie.
That's right. I mean, this dude's no joke. Like, talk about a catalog. Jesus.
Right.
He was an editor on Citizen Kane.
Yeah, he won the Academy
That's
Award for it.
Ridiculous. Who was he? Robert Earl Wise.
Yeah, well, that's who he is.
Crushing it, bro.
Anyway, yeah, those are our credits for it. How about we see what our trailer is for it? You ready for it?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
All right, here we go. 1945. Oh, and I should say, starring, of course. Usually we don't say, but got to give them their due.
Yeah.
From 1945, starring Boris Karloff and featuring Bela Lugosi, The Body Snatcher.
You and I should work together.
You mean we would sell the bodies to the doctors together? To dig them up?
There'll be no digging. The kirkyards are too well guarded. We will, so to speak, burk them.
Ray killed her.
We can't be sure of that.
I'm sure, and I mean to report it. It's like Burke and Hare all over again.
That is,
Grave robbing is one thing, but this is murder.
you ordered this subject, received it here and paid for it. That makes you a party to murder.
You must leave this house.
I can't do that. You heard McFarlane.
Save yourself, Master Fetters. Look at McFarlane.
Gray, I must be rid of you. You become a cancer, a malignant evil cancer, rotting my mind.
You'll never get rid of me, Tony.
All right, The Body Snatcher.
The Booty Snatcher.
Oh, Tim. Oh, Tim.
What a film.
How would you rate it per our rating system? Would you
I'm
tell
gonna be
yourself?
honest with you. I would tell myself that I did not really like this movie.
So would you tell yourself to avoid it, stream it, rent it, or buy it?
Oh man, I'm so close to avoid it just for myself. I was really I just could not get into it. I guess it's not without merit. Like, it's got some cool stuff in it, but I just was not feeling it. So I guess I'll give it a stream, but meh.
Yeah, it's kind of similar. I feel like it was more, I realized with these Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi films, I'm like, it's unfair to always just be comparing them to The Black Cat for me.
Sure.
And I've kind of heard overall it's good to sort of temper your expectations with them.
Oh yeah.
But like I don't know. I mean, the highs were really high for me, but I agree, like overall it was a little just kind of plodding, or plot.
There were only like 4 highs.
Yeah.
I think that was my problem. Is like in between the highs, I was just like,
the idea of that initial conceit of body snatching and medical people getting caught up in that is great, but sort of there was lacking a thrust of a story for me, of like a sort of personal character story. And I don't know, like by the end of it, I wanted to give it a stream it, but then it sat on me more. I almost wanted to give it a rent it, just because it's something about when they're this old, you can't, we get further from being able to recreate what they were. They become more special. You do have, I mean, Bela Lugosi, it's always said you want more from him, but Boris Karloff is, I think, so good in this.
He's great, but
I don't know.
There's so many things that hold me back from being like, this movie, yay.
Yeah, so I could see myself telling her to rent it just for all that it does have, to have seen it. But I feel like, enjoyment-wise, as far as this first viewing, is more a stream it for me. But sounds like a bit more of a solid stream it than for you, even though I also am with you on where it sounds like you were.
I feel like I could take the 4 moments, maybe 5 actually, that I really like, and it would be an amazing 10-minute movie.
Yeah.
And that's it. I'd be like, yeah, I'm satisfied. Goodbye.
The weird thing is, though, even those sort of the individual just talking in a tavern scenes or in the office scenes that are
Some
maybe
of that stuff's okay.
Yeah, I feel like any of the stuff that is lesser, feel like it's dragging a bit. If you're actually able to tune into them, they're cool. And I think just because of maybe expectations, I wasn't able to as much as I'd want to on a first viewing. So that's where I'm just kind of trying to be careful and coming down on whatever and giving it a little more slack for that.
I certainly have I've got thoughts as to what sort of forced me to feel so disconnected with it. And they're all kind of, they're all storytelling problems.
Same here, yeah.
They're not really film problems.
But I just try to imagine watching this with the great remastered print in a big screen and just being, yeah, man, I'd rent this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, the context matters. I don't know. I was very tired yesterday and just feeling like, ugh.
Yeah, but that's why, even though I could
And then I got a parking ticket this morning because I was so out of it last night. I was forgot to move my car.
Well, that's...
Come on!
So that's all why, I don't know, maybe a rent someday or maybe I'll regret it, but I'm a solid stream for now.
Solid stream. Yeah, I'm a weak stream.
All right.
Trickle.
Well, Tim, on to how about our summary?
Okay. You got a doctor. He's kind of a jerk. He's a little pompous.
How about some names?
Oh, God. McGillicuddy. What the hell is his name?
McFarlane.
McFarlane.
Dr. Wolf, quote,
oh, yeah,
Toddy.
Toddy.
Yeah,
so you got McFarlane. He's a pretty renowned doctor. We're in Edinburgh.
In 1860, 70 something like that.
It says right here, 1831.
Oh, whoa, even older. Great.
Okay, so he's pretty well-to-do. He teaches medicine and also is a practicing physician. He's got a student who he makes an assistant pretty quickly, who's sort of our lead ingenue guy. That's not the right word for it, but whatever. What was his name? Fettes, I think is how they said it, right? He's all right. He's a nice dude. And then you've got Gray, who is Karloff. Those are our main 3 people, really. Karloff or Gray is a guy who knows McFarlane from his past, and we learn about that later. But he basically is the body snatcher. He's the guy who goes out, digs up graves, and provides McFarlane with corpses to practice medicine on. And that's essentially what we've got going on. And then antics ensue because, like Fettes becomes an assistant and finds out that that's what Gray does, and he has an ethical sort of dilemma about that, grave robbing and body snatching. And he's motivated by a little girl who is paralyzed. She's got a tumor, a spinal tumor. And
she was in a carriage accident. Yeah.
Right. This is Fettes. He really wants McFarlane to operate on her, and McFarlane's very kind of wishy-washy about it.
It was Fettes, not Fetz?
Oh, whatever.
No, I'm saying, sure. Do you actually remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Fettes. I feel like that's how they're saying it. Fettes. Anyway.
Donald is his first name.
Let's call him Don. Too. So Don, he, let's see. He really wants he basically promises the mom of the girl who's paralyzed that he'll get McFarlane to operate. But McFarlane is like, look, dude, I need more bodies. And you got to get on board. So we got to get Gray to get more bodies. And Gray has very little scruples and has some strange power. He holds over McFarlane. We don't really know what that's all about, but we get some clues here and there. Mm-hmm. And Gray's he's a gnarly dude. How would you kind of describe him? He's sort of like a street vagabondy type dude.
He's a bit more austere than that would lead to suggest, though.
Yeah, that's true. He's not well.
He's kind of like a dark, foppish jerk, very self-serving, but very confident in his dark ways.
Yeah, he's also he's kind of grimy.
Yeah.
I mean, he digs up graves for a living, so he's got dirt under his nails, so to speak.
Anyway, so he eventually actually starts killing people to provide bodies.
That's when we're off to the races.
And then who is Bela Lugosi in this? He plays Joseph. So who is
nobody.
Joseph?
He's like, the fact that they promote him as like a part of this movie is really, really not. I think it's inappropriate.
Here's the thing, though. They had their one moment with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff when they're first together.
That's a standout scene.
I was going to say when they walk by each other and don't even acknowledge each other. And I was worried that was going to be it.
Can you imagine?
That's what I thought. I don't put it past these people.
It was pretty close to just that.
Yeah. So he ended up doing more than I most could have feared. I'll put it that way. But Joseph is basically the assistant to McFarlane. He's
almost like an Igor-esque character. He's kind of the assistant.
Bela Lugosi played.
Right. Yeah, he just does. He sort of sneaks around and scares people accidentally, which I love.
Great. All right, how about we move on to what worked then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
Honestly, the only thing that really, really, really worked for me is the ending. And I feel like, what I was going to my overall feeling is that, from a story point of view, if the movie was more of the ending, getting to the thrust of the ending, if
find
that
a way
was
to
more,
make the ending work, yeah.
The movie, that filled out the movie in that realm of storytelling. Because the ending is essentially that McFarlane ultimately, what we learn is that what Gray has over McFarlane is that there was they went to court. How many? It was quite a while earlier, right? Like 30 years earlier or something. And essentially, Gray took the fall for McFarlane and a few other people too, right? It was a little convoluted, but essentially, Gray took the fall and didn't out McFarlane for crimes previously. And so McFarlane owes him. And that's it, right? You could make a whole long movie about just that. And they kind of do, but we figure that out, and and McFarlane ends up killing Gray, which is a good scene. I like that scene, the whole battle between the two of them. And then we get into kind of a little bit of a Telltale Heart vibe of McFarlane obsessing over the fact that now he has to be the one to dig up people and the guilt of that. And he sees Gray's dead body in place of the body that they've dug up, and he kind of loses his mind. And then there's a wonderful scene of of Gray in the carriage, flopping around
as a dead body, as
a dead body, right? Flopping around and scaring McFarlane half to death, and ultimately causing him to run the carriage off a cliff and die.
That's the scene, Tim, when his corpse's arm was kind of flailing about. I just heard you like just laughing, and it just made me so happy.
I was standing in front of the TV for
One of
that
those
entire scene. I was like, "Ooh, yeah, here something's going on. Great."
So I totally agree. The ending was like the best part of the movie, that whole sequence. But I got to set the stage a bit more. It was so you know, it was so good about it. Sorry, I'm just so excited. You left out it's pouring rain. It's nighttime. We've kind of had this sort of little bit of setup, knowing that the girl was in a carriage accident. The idea there's this threat of a carriage accident sort of in our background. But then it's like the classic Christmas Carol-esque sort of where McFarlane's hearing Boris Karloff, Gray's voice in his head, calling his name, like that. He stops. He thinks, is that just, because what's his face with him as Fetz's Donald is with him,
right?
Not hearing what McFarlane's hearing. Dr. Toddy, as he hates being called. But there was something in that scene where it's like, yes, this is great. This is classic. Even though the movie doesn't feel like it didn't necessarily feel like the ending to the movie that we had in some way. But at the same time, it was so good. It was so good in itself. And the crash was amazing. And then you have kind of, like you said, Telltale Heart, Poe, Twilight Zone-esque ending where it's the body of the actual corpse they dug up. But God, the actors committing. That guy, I'll just say it now, the guy who played Dr. Wolf McFarlane, he was great.
He is good. He seemed very familiar, but I don't know what I would have seen him in from that era.
Henry Daniel.
He's good.
Great.
He's really good at playing that. He's stiff upper lipping it kind of, but he's got a lot of sort of emotion and just things are kind of percolating under the surface. He's covering his emotion, and like it finally spills out when he realizes or thinks that his attempted surgery to remove the tumor for the little girl and help her walk again, when he thinks that has failed, he has this really great performance of like disbelief and then certitude that it wasn't his surgery that failed, that it's something about her, it's something else. And he's like, he's sticking to that story, even though underneath you can tell he's like completely grieving the fact that he failed.
Yeah, and it's a compelling character flaw too. That's just he's perfect for. That's as far as concern more about his own abilities versus actually helping the girl at all. or
Right.
even having basic bedside manner for the girl. Like, we see that disconnect.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anything else on that last carriage scene? Because if not, I can just go sort of down the list of my other two favorite scenes.
I think the only other thing to mention really is just how the biggest successes of this entire movie are directorial. They are the way that the noir sort of lighting and use of light and dark are done in the most important scenes is really, really striking and really, really well constructed, and clearly we're in the hands of a director and a cinematographer who know what they're doing.
I mean, I'd argue even more throughout, unless it's just sort of the well-lit office,
Yeah, I think that it stands out in the more dramatic scenes. Like they did more dramatic, composition and lighting in the more dramatic scenes. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
And so like those really stand out throughout this movie. But in the carriage scene in particular, the way the sort of the lantern and the it's the light on Donald's face throughout that is really cool because he's kind of got, they're being rained on. He's got his hat down. You can only see like this one sort of corner of his face for a lot of it. And it's just cool.
You can see the fog that the light's just getting captured in. It's thick. It's viscous.
Yeah. Yeah. They really doused him. That must have been an incredibly unpleasant scene to film.
It's wet. Oh my God, they're so wet. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, that to me is the thing that really I just the composition. Like I finally felt like I was in a movie for real during that scene.
Okay, I'm like wanting to. That's I'm like there's a lot in there. I'm not. How do I transition that? Because you kind of like got maybe ahead to what I wanted to say as far as just an overall thing that I think was my very top best thing was just simply that atmosphere in the sets. That's like who Val Lewton, I don't know, it's what he's known for in a way, and it's honestly what I came for. And definitely there in that carriage scene. But now sort of jump back towards the first scene that I really perked up at, which was very Cat People-esque. But it's when we get introduced to the beggar woman who's singing her song in the alley in the middle of the night, who then is the imminent victim. It's the scene where she becomes the victim. And just that stalking scene, the tension of the little stop and talk with her, the cobblestone streets, all that. I'm like, this is great. Here's what I'm here for. It's happening. Yeah. And again, just, I don't know, suspense combined with the atmosphere and sets and setting.
That was, I think that may have been the first moment that I really perked up and was like, ooh, yeah, that's really good stuff right there.
Great. On the same page there.
Yeah.
And then so I had that, and then the ending on the carriage scene, and then the third scene that was really a standout scene or sequence to me came in the middle with, and maybe this was just like I was just so happy to get actually some kind of use or payoff of having Bela and Boris together.
Yeah.
But it was their big scene where it was so good. I mean, it all culminates in this fight, but how it starts with basically Bela going there to blackmail Bela Lugosi, saying, I'm going to out you. You're killing people. You're stealing bodies. And Boris, sorry, it's hard not to say their actual names. John Gray, Boris Karloff. He's just so fiendish is another good word to describe his character in this. How it was so much fun, how it kind of throws you off in a way where he keeps giving Bela Lugosi more alcohol, saying, let's work together, let's celebrate, drink up. And you see Gray, he doesn't even he doesn't even take a sip. Like when he holds up the glass, he doesn't even like actually take a drink from it. So I was sort of thinking like, okay, so is that his like standby poison whiskey or whatever? Like, you know, is that what the scene is? But no, that it wasn't that. And it was just sort of him forcing him to drink more was more just about him getting caught up in his own immediate, I'm about to kill this person ecstasy. Like you can see kind of imagine as his character, he kind of starts out more reserved and doing all knightly duty, you know, how he approaches killing the bodies. But this is sort of the one real example where sort of rather than hiding it off screen or just getting the moment where he kills him, we see his like switching into serial killer mode in a way to poor Bela Lugosi. So, yeah, just that was its kind of arc through it, and then just culminating in this gruesome choking, basically, or like hand over mouth, you know, however he did it.
Smashes him in over the head and like lunges onto him and puts him on the ground and then sort of smothers him, I guess.
Yeah, it's gruesome. And it had
it's pretty like, I mean, I remember going, whoa, that's where we're like, I wasn't expecting that in this movie.
Right.
Like it really shocked me.
I mean, because it's setting it up like he's poisoning him. And then it's also just kind of, I know we've talked about this. I don't know if it was in Cat People, but some of the older movies we've mentioned how the fight scenes, or in this case, this murder scene, there's an intensity to them in a way that a lot of sort of more typical modern Hollywood films don't have, where it's sort of, I don't know, they're a bit more clumsy. There's less punches thrown. It's quite a lot more like what a real fight looks like.
Exactly. I mean, I've bartended for many years and watched the clumsy, just uncoordinated scuffles that occur. Very rarely do you see punches thrown. There's a lot of grabbing people's shirts or like pushing faces or like, you know, it's just not elegant at all.
I know we've touched on it before. I forget what movie. But anyway, exactly. And that, it's cool though in that.
I think we talked about it in The Lighthouse.
Yeah, probably. What's neat, though, you almost forget that those require the same choreography and rehearsal to pull off. And that's just part of more why, I don't know, why they work in a fun way. You get, there's oh, God, it's scary. It's gruesome. I didn't want to put this in what worked, but it is sad. It works in itself as a scene, but just it was sad seeing Bela Lugosi killed off like that.
Yeah.
You know.
I feel like, that is true. It felt really...
it was just sad.
It just seemed like an underutilization of somebody who's got much more to offer in any film that they're in.
We'll get that into more in our next section.
Cool.
But those three, the stalking scene, that scene, the Boris versus Bela, the ending on the carriage, those were my standout sequences.
Yeah, I would add the actual fight between McFarlane and Gray.
That was my honorable mention scene for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
There's something slightly different and exciting to me about the way that scene was shot.
Well, that was more... It did push the more sort of action fight scene, but it worked for it because it was sort of our big carriage scene aside, our sort of our climax in a sense, our big, lead into the climax. I don't know, it worked as
what I think? I think the reason it stands out more to me is because they use a really sort of now kind of, I think it's considered a maybe classic or maybe almost a trope of that era, but it's done in a really a compelling way. So they have the fight, the actiony sort of punch up, and they're knocking each other around, and that's all exciting and great. But as we get to the final moments of it, they do pan away. And they're in front of the fire. They pan away to a wall, and there's a cat on a little, table or chest or something like that. And the wall above them, above the cat, their shadows of the scuffle are cast. And you see one of the two shadows overtake the other one and finish him off. But you do not know who has won in that moment. And I think that kind of, suspense and like leaving that open for us to wonder for at least, you find out like moments later that it was McFarlane who won. But just getting that suspense of, oh my God, when are we going to get the answer? And not showing the death in the way that we were shown the death of Bela, Joseph. I think really it's sort of just an example of upping the ante, like knowing that you can't just do the same scene again, right? It's very similar in what's actually going on physically, right? It's just two dudes knocking each other around, which is essentially what we saw with Joseph and Gray earlier. So you gotta up the ante, like make this one count a little bit more.
That was more of a murder. This is more of an actual fair fight, tussle, a culmination of two rivals.
Right, yeah. And so it's just got more going on, and appropriately so, you direct it with more going on, right? Like add some more flair to the moment and some mystery and suspense, and that. So that, for me, that's basically it. The alleyway scene, the first murder, is the first one. Boris and Bela's scene is the second one. This fight scene is the third, and the carriage is the fourth. I don't think I really have a fifth, even though I said I thought I might.
Well, yeah, I said what I loved so much about that fight scene. I started saying it's culmination, it's action-packed, yada, yada. But you alluded to it, the device of cutting to the cat watching on. I just loved so much, of course, right here as my cat walks up to me. But it's getting that reaction like from that cat, like when it first just sort of recoils and kind of screams at them for fighting. It makes it like you can't. Like, that's not a rehearsed thing. That's not a cat, act. It just adds this whole...
a character?
Yeah. Sure. Dogter? Anyway. Yeah, you get what I'm saying with that. And then just throughout, keep continuing to cut to the cat. I loved it so much. Simple, very effective.
Yeah. Obviously, the people who made this movie were cat people more than dog people.
Oh, God, I didn't... Yeah. I'll say that for what did not work.
Fair enough.
Hey, worked once before. Let's keep it going.
I guess, yeah.
Something just about Boris with cats.
Yep, yeah.
Cats. A debilitating fear of cats. He says the black cat.
Yeah, other than those there's sort of they're moments. Obviously, they're the exciting moments of the film, but like it bums me out that that's the only thing we have our hat to hang our hat on. Like you want the other scenes to be equally compelling for other reasons, story reasons generally, or character reasons. And man, I just never felt it.
Well, that sounds like you jumped the gun to our next section. Does that mean you want to get there?
I honestly, I feel bad, but I don't have anything else to say about it. Boris is amazing. Like we already said that. Like his acting is so good. The doctor's acting is so good. Bela doing his weird little Igor-y thing is great.
Just him being him. He's just great.
Yeah.
Put him in doing whatever. I'll like it as much as we do get.
Outside of that, is there anything else? I don't even want to reach for something that's not there, but they're just, I just felt the rest of it was meh.
But you agree, atmosphere, setting, all that too?
Everything, almost everything.
All right.
Yes. Some of the sets, no. I can expand on that.
Cool. And when you mentioned the kind of effective shadow work and lighting and all that, I'll say that was really effective, especially for me in the second half. Once we get to those two, the murder scene and the fight scene, once they're in that tavern a lot.
The tavern, the way the tavern is lit, just the dampness of that. I obviously always love some dampness.
Yep.
I will say the way that the way that Gray does that thing of hanging things and taunting McFarlane, like hanging the past over his head. The performance of that and the way it's very it's really well plotted out, sort of in camera. You know, they sit on it. They don't rush through it or try to do anything. They just let the camera sit on Gray's face and let that whole thing sink in. And you get to the reverses of McFarlane, just you can see it eating away at him. And so to me, that's probably the fifth thing that stands out, is just that the interactions between the two of them, especially as we move further along in the story, when you really start to realize that there's more going on, the backstory stuff starts to come out. The tension that the two of them have is quite good. And it's shot really well. Like, that tavern stuff is great.
Absolutely.
So,
and the
to
way
me, that
the way that Gray messes with him, I kind of think I've already mentioned it, where he calls him Toddy. And then, you know, as McFarlane's nickname, and then McFarlane goes, "Don't call me that," or "I hate that nickname." So then in the next sentence, he just immediately calls him Toddy again. It's like, it's just ruthless. Says it all right there. Great. All right. That's all I have too. Agreed. Cool. Agreed across the board. And here we go. Next section. What did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
Yeah, I'll get out of the way. I'm over just killing animals in movies. It's as I know this is an old movie or whatever, but it's as tropey as saving a cat in a movie, you know, as that
Isn't
trope.
It? Yeah, we need to stop. What, isn't there a term? There's a term for the way that women are depicted. It's like refrigerating. It's like something to do with a refrigerator. Do you know what I'm talking about? The way that women are often depicted. Man, I'll have to find it and look it up or whatever. But it feels. Yeah, I don't remember why that is what is coming to mind, but I'll figure it out some other time. So, using the death of an animal as a device to motivate your protagonists, I just find it to be cheap.
So what are we talking? We hope you watched it with us, but yeah, our body snatcher Boris Karloff Gray, he kills a dog at the beginning.
Yeah, like with a shovel.
Doesn't really go anywhere. Yeah,
just because it's just to show that he's an asshole.
And to show he's
capable.
He says later that the dog was alerting his presence at the graveyards.
I don't know.
I just wanted to get it out of the way. And again, it was 1945. We don't need to talk about it anymore.
Fair enough.
Not into it.
I'm not into it either.
Very subjective.
Okay,
Great.
so a big part for me, just I can kind of see why it works, but for me the way that the sets for the vast majority of the movie, they're just really boring to me. I don't know what it is exactly. It may just be a product of the era and the way things are shot, but that ornate, sort of austere living room where they have a lot of conversations, I'm just like, if you're gonna do a scene in that room, do something more with it. Do something more interesting. I mean, cat people does a lot with just an apartment, a lot. And everything in that movie, it's the same era, is pointing to the themes of the story. There is none of that in those scenes. And I think that's largely what I was sort of like, I'm bored, I don't care, I'm not really compelled to pay attention to this conversation or whatever's going on. And when you couple that with this sort of B story of the little girl, I don't care. Like, I don't care about Donald. I don't care about the little girl. I don't care about her mom. Like, all of that stuff seems frivolously unimportant to me. And those scenes go on and on.
So you just bridged two things. You mentioned the office things they shot, and then the girl's story. So
because most of those conversations happen in those rooms, that I think that having both of them happening at the same time, I was like, I think you're doubling down on what I don't like.
On your first point, yeah, I agree, and I think showing what cat people did do in the sort of similar office living room scenes. Yeah, it's exactly it. For me, it's less in, like, it's fine if it is kind of a well-lit, almost, outward appearance safe space. But then
fine.
It's so it comes down to camera angles for me.
Yeah.
And sort of telling the story with camera angles, which we now have seen enough of these old movies. We're so impressed with their camera angles that they do that it's not really an excuse for me that it is an old movie anymore.
Right. I mean, remember also in the Black Cat, not Cat People, but in the Black Cat, you've got that big, expansive, open, main room that a lot of the scenes take place in. But like, because there's the stairway and the balcony and like the weird design of that house and the different shadow stuff that's going on that they very purposefully put in there to make it have this odd, almost, it's not futuristic, but it's oddly modern look to it on top of the ancient dungeons or the castle that was below. Like, doing something with the sets to speak to the story matters, I think. And maybe they were just sort of handcuffing themselves by saying, well, this is realism. It takes place in a real place, in a real time, and we want to stick to that. I guess that's fine. But even then, you can still do things with it, right? Like Citizen Kane does a lot, and there's nothing fantastical about that, right? So you can do it. And they just kind of, I think they just kind of, we're like, okay, it's a dialogue scene. It's this. Let's just get through it. Is sort of how it felt to me, or maybe that's how I just.
I mean, look at any of the older ones we watched. Vampire, The Innocents, like that's how they're all shot. I mean, the Black Cat you already mentioned,
right? But all those.
Cat People.
Yeah, Cat People. Like they all have they all do a really good job of making the mundane room feel like something more is going on.
Yeah.
Even just from a visual standpoint, just like you said, the angle, whatever. But man, these are boring.
Right. Agreed. I would love to see it again on like a bigger screen, better print, better quality, all that. Sometimes picking up on the details in the room is enough in itself. And then also maybe like just because on that first watch, I was just like, "Where's Bella?" Now maybe watching it, I'd be more just already in with the McFarlane character and sort of enjoying his scenes more. So now, then you went on to mention, as you put it, the B story of the little girl. So, couple things on that. Couple things that makes me think of. This is really interesting how you put it as the B story, because it both is and it isn't. Yeah. And I think how it isn't, it is how it feels like it's kind of our not fully executed, not appropriate A story in a way, where it's really our only thrust for them, for our young positive upstanding citizen doctor with Donald. It's his sort of moral thrust for actually getting in there and going along with this. But at a certain point, I think what it should have done is change the situation so it is more personal for them. So it's completely disassociated from saving this little girl as being the main. It wasn't enough for me as an audience member to latch on to as a thrust. It needed to be like where something make it work so they have to keep killing people, otherwise they're going to get caught in some way, or some way to make it personal like that.
Well, I think that one option you have is you have a movie about essentially a serial killer and the enabler of that serial killer. And then you have this other story going on. Those two things, they need to intersect more, I think, for it to work. And your serial killer straight up kills a woman on the street. Why not make the threat of him going after the mother the peril that we care about?
Like as if she has it has to have more immediate genes or whatever that or blood that the body won't reject.
Anything. She's just out of convenience. She's there. She's the one who's around. Like, why wouldn't Gray be like? I mean, I get there's reasons why you wouldn't just practical
because she's
reasons,
the mother.
But like,
it'd have to be a specific reason why it'd have to be her, because I don't even think they'd stoop to, we're going to kill the little girl's mother. But anyway, you could do it, I'm sure, lots of ways.
But you could even just give Donald the idea that she's now in peril, that the mother is now in peril because of the circumstances of what's going on. He's like, well, if the lady on the street isn't safe and this guy's starting to kill people for the sake of, his own enjoyment at this point, it's sort of graduated from just a job. He's doing it because he likes sticking it to McFarlane. Who's next? And then you can actually play that out. You can put her in seeming peril and have that be a misdirect so that like you could weave it so that Donald gets this idea that, oh my God, something Gray said suggests that maybe he's going to go after this woman that I now care about. And that is the impetus for Donald to not be around at a certain point that then pushes the story forward to allow McFarlane and Gray to have their confrontation, right? Like these little things of like who's in danger, who's where to prevent or to allow that danger to follow through, and then turning that on its head so that we the audience go, oh shit, he shouldn't have left, he should have stayed, and then this other thing that's more tragic wouldn't have happened or whatever. Like that to me is it's kind of the storytelling thing that I mentioned that I feel like is just not there. It's like the twists and turns and the sort of the intrigue of what's going to happen never really feels like it rises to the level of compelling that I want in this type of movie.
At a certain point, it's kind of like, oh, they just keep killing people and taking bodies, and you just kind of, okay, I guess that's not what they're doing at this point. Yeah. No, I don't know if I'm necessarily sold on specifically having to tie in the mother, but I think just as an example of something to sort of provide more motivation or and tie the stories together.
Or McFarlane's wife, right? Like she's around, she's at risk.
His
like,
secret wife, yeah.
put people in peril, and not to say that it's just women that need to be in peril. That's not what I'm getting at. Like, don't. Let's not go down that road.
That's what I'm saying. There's something else more personal. Just I thought like just them getting caught, that could be enough, them getting exposed somehow.
Have Donald be the one who's, he goes out with Gray to dig up a body at one point. Like, why did we never feel like maybe Gray's going to just turn on him?
Right. And I mean, that's another way of give him more compelling reasons to keep going along in a way and have it, become more, even if it is just the little girl that he cares about. I wasn't even feeling that was his reason at a certain point.
Yeah.
But I guess more too on, calling it the B story. It's interesting. Maybe this is a more thing of note, or I guess a way to say, I don't know. We'll see where we end up. But comparing it to other films that, we sort of associate with as the time, same actors, like let's take The Black Cat, but you think Frankenstein, Dracula too. There really is no B story a lot of the times. They have this sort of pointed 70-minute runtime to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool. It's fun. It's something we don't have nowadays that, or, you don't see as much that works. And like, let's say the black cat, like you could almost start to argue that the couple is, that gets taken along. They're not a B story. They're a MacGuffin, really.
That's true. Yeah.
And so that's sort of where, I don't know, that's how the little girl sort of been. You could say it was that more so, but no, at the same, it felt this sort of like a failed integration of different story points in the Body Snatcher more so.
Yeah, I mean, there's that whole thing of like, oh look, because she heard the hooves of the horse, the white horse, she's compelled to actually like overcome her resistance to standing up, and she does it because she's not really thinking about it. Like that's it's kind of a cliche. Like we've seen that thing. Maybe at the time it wasn't. Maybe this was the first time that cliche was used. But having that somehow be the impetus for Donald to run home and tell the doctor, but then the doctor's like, it doesn't matter. I've got other business to attend. It just doesn't feel like it's not woven in to mean anything. Like it's just sort of like a thing that happens, and then they move on to the next thing.
Right. And again,
I think that's my problem with all of that.
And a lot of this, as it always is wanting a movie that just wasn't there. And it is interesting to sort of frame this all again as the thought experiment of, we loved that ending. How would you get there?
Right.
But anyways,
well, it makes me wonder too, like what the original story has in it.
Yeah. Well, just my other main thing, and this definitely falls into, our expectations of kind of what we wanted it to be. But poor Bela Lugosi just getting relegated to this part. Like, as much as I love the doctor, at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe Bela could have played the doctor. I don't know.
He definitely could have.
Yeah.
He definitely could have.
And then just seeing him again get killed like that, there was this weird kind of like Boris had the upper hand in the end of their call it a rivalry. I don't really think it's that. But Bela seems to sort of get the short end of the stick. And maybe this is too me coming off of rewatching Ed Wood pretty recently, where we sort of get his tragic life story. And not too, I guess by the end, as far as how Ed Wood portrays it. Anyway, just seeing poor Bela, just wanting him to get more out of the two of them when they were alive, put them together in more fun ways. Again, I'm so grateful we did get that one key scene with them, was so good. But even then, I was sad seeing him get literally just like choked and smothered by Boris Karloff getting the juicier role.
Yeah. It is a bummer, but well, yeah, their scene is worth watching for sure.
Yeah. Anyway, you good for our next section or any other?
Yeah. No, I'm good.
Great. All right. Last section for the Body Snatcher. Things of note.
Things of note!
This should be interesting.
So actually, I did have another thing in what worked for me that I failed to mention, but I think it very much can also fall under things of note. And that is, Tim, the fun of the moral question at play. That is something that I had it written down right here in my notes. Just totally forgot to mention it, and it absolutely did work. But it's there straight up, and it is kind of what you're hanging your hat on, theme wise, story wise throughout. Whether it was how well it was integrated or not, aside the point. But they do bring up the idea of when someone's dead, why can't we just use their body for helping someone else?
Right.
And I think that's, like so many divisive things in our world, it sort of and here's just my take on it, I guess I'm jumping into, if it is a question, like, I think there's definitely truth to a person should have their right and say as far as, what's done with their body afterwards.
Sure.
But then you get the other side of the argument. Well, what about just when bodies aren't available and you could save this little girl? What do you do? So I think so many things, the question or the solution, it's not one of those two extremes, but it's how do we create and nurture a world where people would be more willing just to check the donor box, let's say, in this case. Because it's something you can't,
it's complicated.
Yeah, you can't, like so many things, you can't shame someone if they don't want that with their body into then deciding to donate their body, let's say. But yeah, no, that was cool that was front and center in a lot of the scenes. And and that's, you could say what it was about in a sense. And that did work for me, and obviously the moral question it brings up is also something interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would have, I intended to mention this in things that worked, or what worked. The depiction of a doctor having the certitude of that thing, and then having the Hippocratic Oath be the last thing that they put up on the screen, I think is a really, that's the underlying story. And I think that it's there. It's in the movie for sure. And I think it's what makes McFarlane an interesting character. It is, I agree. It's an interesting thing to kind of watch a character contemplate, or at least have Donald force him to contemplate by being this other sort of having another point of view on it. That's pretty.
Gray he's just the walking embodiment of whatever, it's.
That's right.
He's strong on the one side of the argument. He's all about it.
Yeah, I like the moral question that it brings up. So yeah, I agree. It is interesting. It's a cool theme.
Yeah.
Or question or whatever.
You got anything else interesting, things of note worthy?
Oh, well, we mentioned a bunch of the things I was going to talk about in terms of who all made this movie. So that we got that out of the way. No, I don't really have anything else. One thing I was curious about, let's see, where was it filmed? I guess it doesn't say here. I thought it. Do you think they filmed any of that on location? It doesn't look like it. I
don't know. You wonder for those streets, it always feels like they're real streets.
Yeah, where was that? It looked awesome. Maybe it could have been a backlot type thing.
Yeah,
I guess. Damn, I thought it would be right here, and it's not. Oh well. But other than that, nothing else stands out to me.
Very last short tidbit, important to note, this is apparently the last film Lugosi and Karloff made together.
Oh, okay.
So I'm sure that's a big part too. And that combined with the filmmakers is, I'm sure, why I added it to our list, just to dismember.
Yeah.
Great.
Cool.
Great. Well, if that's it for The Body Snatcher, not The Booty Snatcher, from 1945. Tib, you got a recommendation for us? You want me to go?
I do want you to go.
Great. Well, it's not often that I finish a book based on the expediency at which I read. But kind of, when, talking to you about you like that, You Must Remember This podcast, I was really feeling like I wanted to dive into some old Hollywood lore and atmosphere, actually, is a good way to put it. And I discovered a new book called The Castle on Sunset: Life, Death, Love, Art, and Scandal at Hollywood's Chateau, Marmont.
Ooh,
You know
that's
all
fun.
about the Chateau Marmont, Tim.
I've been there. I mean, well, I've been in the lobby, the main ornate room.
I mean, I'm jealous
very
now.
Cool.
I want to go.
I was very lucky. You know, this is one of those sort of things that happens when you live in LA at times. I worked with a guy who was dating a woman who he's now married to, whose best friend was the chef at Chateau Marmont.
Cool.
And because of that long, weird connection, one time we were working together and the women called and said, hey, you guys should come hang out. We're hanging out at the Chateau and I'll make you, the chef was like, I'll make you some, we had these little, what are they called? They're little like fruit tart,
okay.
thing. It was very, very over the top in my opinion. I was like, I don't belong here.
So, I mean, are you aware of the kind of history and how did the atmosphere there make you feel? Like that's kind of what it's.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it feels like a time capsule.
It is that. So, I mean, it's got a fascinating history about, the change of ownership along the way, the stars who made it home along the way. So it gets into all that. I think you would really enjoy it, Tim. And I even watched the Sofia Coppola movie Somewhere that is kind of about it and takes place there.
Oh, cool.
That was really good. Very Sofia Coppola. I liked it. But yeah, no, I'm specifically recommending the book by Sean Levy, The Castle on Sunset. And yeah, it's I guess I just wanted to put how to put it, very like accepting of eccentric outsiders, bohemian vibe throughout its history. It tracks those types of people. It's like their whole thing is, yes, respect the privacy, like first and foremost. So it kind of, as anything we have, toes that line of anything goes, but more fall on the good of that as far as wanting to be very accepting of anyone. So ahead of their time in that regard, but also can be pushed to a fault, some would argue. But that ethos of pure acceptance is something I'm always drawn to and interested by. So as far as, and just that combined with its connection to old Hollywood and it's still existing, a monument in that sense. I want to stay there. But until then, I really enjoyed the book.
Yeah, that sounds
Castle
cool.
on Sunset.
Man, what should I recommend, Dead? I feel like it was on the road for, God, I don't know, 10 or 11 days. So I feel like I haven't
You watched my copy of Parasite yet?
Honestly, last night I almost did, but I got too tired.
Okay.
I was like, today's the day. And then I was like, oh shit, I have to watch the Booty Snatcher first. And then I watched that and I was like, now I'm very tired. And I went to bed. God, what have I been doing? What is my life lately? I don't know.
Anything from your trip?
God, what do we do? I could tell you what I would not recommend, Dead, which is driving from Milwaukee to LA in 2 days. Don't do that.
Okay.
It's 2 16-hour days by myself.
We'll take it. A reverse
Hey, you know what we did
recommendation.
do? Which was very cool. I mean, this is so random and probably going to be difficult for anybody to really do unless you happen to be in Amarillo. I'll put a picture of this on our Instagram. There's this super random thing basically on Highway 40 in Texas as you go through Amarillo, and just sort of on the side of the road in a random field are like 7 or 8 Cadillacs that they're half in the ground and they're in a row. So the front end has been buried of each of the Cadillacs, and they're like kind of the back end is sticking out of the ground at an angle, and they're all in a row. And I think it's called like the Cadillac Graveyard or something like that. I'll link it in our Instagram. It's super odd, and so it just is there, and people pull off the highway, and bring spray paint and just spray paint them. And so there's years and years and years of spray paint buildup on these things. So it sort of has become, and maybe this was the intention, it's just this weird art installation that's been there for quite a while. I didn't look up how long it's been there, but it's weird and wild. And I took some very cool pictures at like just after the sun had gone down when we were out there. And yeah, it's an odd place, but super cool. So go there if you're in Amarillo or driving through.
I love
That's
it. That's
mine.
The great recommendation. I think it would be cool. Imagine, I mean, you say if the tradition is spray painting it, but imagine refurbishing them from the like where you can see them up and just giving them a stellar paint job. It'd be so neat.
It is very bizarre. The amount of paint buildup that is on them, like the wheels, they don't have tires on them. Look like balls because of how much paint has been sprayed onto them.
So would that be against the point what I suggested, or would that be cool, you think?
I think it'd be impossible. It would be super cool, but like how would you get all of those years of paint off of the metal?
I don't know. I don't know. Paint cars.
It'd be cool. Yeah, it's a very strange thing, but it's there. There's lots of stuff across the U.S. that like that you sort of randomly discover on these road trips. But that one's cool.
Great. So, Tim, I believe it's your turn to pull from the hat.
It sure is. I'm going to pull. I'm going to shake it up a little bit here. Oh, one fell out. Hang on. Put that one right back in. I didn't see what it was. All right, here we go. And I'm stopping with this one. Oh, it is How Apropos, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1931.
Cool. And we have both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hydes in there. So
this one is the earlier one?
Yep.
I presume?
I believe it's 31 and 41.
Cool.
Great. Well, I'm glad we're going in order with them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, until then, until the 1931 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you can find us wherever you found us. We got an Instagram. We got a Twitter. Our big ask is that you tell a friend if you enjoyed being here with us, because we'd love to have them too, should they be in need of some horror fiends, some horror buds to journey.
We know they are. We know they're in need.
Yeah, to join us on this journey of dismemberment and delving, as I've said.
Yep.
Great. Well, let's end on then. You mentioned the Hippocratic Oath. I don't know who this guy was, but Hippocrates. That's they end the film The Body Snatcher with a quote from them. And it is this. These are his words. It is through air that man rises. It is through tragedy that he learns. All roads to learning begin in darkness and go out into the light. So with that, thank you so much for listening.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.